Hi, Lindsay, and welcome to the podcast interview. And thank you so much for making the time. Um, for those who don't know you yet or you are not that familiar, would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for having me too, Lisa. It's such an awesome experience to be here with you. So yeah, I'm Lindsay. I am a consciousness creation coach, meaning simply that I love to help women start to shift into consciously creating the life of their dreams and shifting beyond the self-doubt and the stories and the frustration that comes when we're kind of creating from that place of trauma or wound. So really just all about healing. I found myself on this path years ago because I struggled with a lot of addiction and depression and alcoholism and different things that were really just so much powerlessness in my life. So then when I had a spiritual awakening and I started to recognize how I had been living from this place of just so much confusion and disconnection. And then I started exploring down the paths of my spirituality with yoga and breath work and different teachings. I started to recognize, wow, how much power we actually have. And so that very then quickly became my mission in life. I knew that I had to teach other people the same thing so that we could really truly be creating consciously the kind of new earth, the idea of abundance and health and love and well-being for everybody. And so that's I then started, down my journey of becoming a business owner and a coach.
Yeah, I love what you said, like everything, and I can so relate to what you said. So I heard you mentioning so many words now and so much topic about spirituality. And so how was it for you actually before you went into the, let's say, spiritual journey? Like, have you always been open for these topics, or were you like, well, that's weird, who does that?
Totally. So I've always been pretty open-minded in that I would like to consider things. However, I grew up like in when I was growing up, I was quite the rebel as well. So I was very anti anything that I kind of felt was religious. Like I didn't want to hear anything that was even remotely, dogmatic or anything like that. So I was a little bit like, okay, no to God, right? No to anything that's traditional religion. But then when I was really, really struggling and suffering in my 20s and I was trying to get sober, I started to connect with like the idea of nature, the idea of an intelligence. And I just started to be able to see that there was like a connection between everything. And I started to really just like the idea of that there was this greater intelligence and it didn't necessarily have to be God in the way that any religions were telling me it had to be. So that was when I really started to open up more and more and more to it. And then in my early 30s, which is when I had like my big, like, boom, spiritual awakening moment, that then started me again down the path. And at that point, it was just like anything I could get my hands on to read or to talk to somebody or to listen to or to study that started talking about, it didn't matter. I was going from like yoga to Buddhist teachings to quantum mechanic teachings, like anything that was kind of getting into that realm of spirituality and consciousness. And I was just like devouring it because it just felt like there was so much truth in it. And I was able to then start understanding why in my 20s, like I had been drawn to yoga, but I didn't understand at all why I liked yoga. Like I didn't understand why it did so much for me. I just knew that I would walk out of classes feeling so peaceful and I didn't understand why. And so it was later after that awakening, and after I really started studying this stuff and really immersing myself and practicing it, really, because it doesn't matter how much we practice. It's really about, I mean, how much we study. It's really about the practice of it. That I really started to understand why yoga had that effect on me, because it really was about that internal connection and that union. And so that then just opened me up more and more and more and more. And I talk to so many people who do have to go through that, like coming out of the spiritual closet, if you will, because they're very afraid of what other people might say or think of them. And I definitely did have a little bit of that, especially when I did start getting more and more and more into like my meditation, and my meditation started getting more out there, and I was working with a lot of crystals. I was like, oh my God, are people just going to think like I'm just this woo woo crazy? Like, are they just going to not take me seriously? And of course, the more I just like lived it and breathed it and practiced it, the more it just became part of who I am. And it just comes out in whatever I do now. So, yeah.
It's so funny, like all these things that are so similar within, like with us, because even me, I was like, oh my God, what the heck? No, go away. Like as a child, because it was so strict and you had so many rules, and I felt it was wrong, and all these people pretending and not really like doing actionable stuff on it.
Mm,
And funny balance, I really like the spiritual stuff. Like I was actually doing karate as a kid, so karate, and we actually meditated at the beginning of each class and at the end. But at that time, obviously I didn't know it was meditation. And like you, I was like afraid, like, okay, what would other people actually think of me? Now I'm doing yoga and I like it, and like you not really understanding like how it was transforming the life. And so if you are now helping people to actually accept themselves and, like, let's say, come out of the spiritual closet, um like, what do you think actually is the toughest part to like share it with others?
yeah, I love that question, because that's like the core of so much of what I do, right? Because it's like when we think about our connection to whatever we perceive is out there, if you want to call it God, source, universe, right? It's like that is truly our expression, right? And we get to explore that, and we get to evolve in that. And I really truly believe that that's a big part of even just our whole purpose here, is that we're having this journey of coming back closer to whatever we believe is that source that's at the heart of all things. And so the more we connect with that, the more that then comes through us as an expression, right? And when we look at the way that we are brought up and programmed to be in this world, like this third dimensional reality that we're sort of evolving out of now, but we're still in it, it's like there's so much in emphasis, right, put on what are other people going to think. I don't know about you, but for me growing up, I was constantly hearing stuff like, well, what are the neighbors going to think? What is this purple people going to think? What am I going to tell your father, right? Like every time you did something that wasn't deemed the correct action, it was like there was all this like almost like shaming, right? Like, oh, you're bad or wrong for wanting to do that way. And it's not necessarily that the behaviors were always bad or wrong, for lack of a better word. Sometimes they just weren't according to the way the system wanted us to be, right? Like we think about being in school and you're the talkative kid who wants to chat with all their friends, and it's like that's wrong when you're in school, right? And you get in trouble for that, and they send home reports, and then you get in more trouble. And so it's like then that, like, if that's what we grew up in, it's like there becomes this internal dialogue of, oh, well, I'm bad or wrong because I like to chat and I want to talk to my friends and I want to have fun, and I'm not supposed to be having fun. I'm supposed to be over here learning, and learning is supposed to be serious. And so it's like we develop this like internal like a split, right, where it's like, okay, there's this aspect of me, but the world keeps trying to tell me that this aspect is wrong. So it's like we keep burying it inside and in favor of whatever we think it is that's going to get the praise or the approval, starting with our parents, goes out to our siblings, our families, our communities. And it's like we get caught in this matrix, if you will, of like seeking other people's approval rather than our own. And that approval often comes at the cost of us denying or rejecting aspects of ourself that are part of that unique expression of divinity coming through. And I think that that's what really, it's like that core program of like, right, you have to fit in to be safe, you have to get approval to be safe and get love. And it's like we do that and we do that and we do that until we get to that place where we're just so done with it that we're like, all right, you know what? I'm not here to please anybody anymore. I'm here to please myself. And then we have to start the work of, releasing the programs and doing the healing and digging deep inside to let go of that stuff that keeps us in those loops. Yeah.
Yes, I loved everything you said, and especially this part about like trying to do stuff and be a person who is actually appreciated from society. It's so crazy how deep it sits within us, and we might not even notice it. So it's like this autopilot, and then all this, let's say, lizard brain from the neurological perspective that's like, oh, you shouldn't do that because then you might not be accepted by society, then you are not safe, then you might die or something like this sets in. And it's so crazy because nowadays, I mean, we don't actually have to be afraid of that if someone doesn't like us, that we would die or that our survival is like be in danger or something, but still it's within us even though we don't notice. So when you did this change, like this transformation, and you, let's say, came out of your spiritual closet, what changed for you apart from like being yourself? Were there like aspects maybe in like private life or in business that really transformed where you before wouldn't have thought it could actually happen? Because I think there are some people who are like, yeah, spirituality, that sounds good. And some who are maybe still a bit like, I'm not so sure. So let's see, are there any other aspects apart from the being more you and connected to source?
Totally. Yeah. And I feel like that it's like it's one piece, right? And the more, so the spirituality is one piece of really like for me owning who I really am and allowing that to be shown to the world, right? And expressing that to the world in the way that feels authentic to me. And in doing that, I mean it's shifted, I think, all areas of my life, right? Because before I fully owned that piece and really allowed it to start coming through in my coaching and in my business and in my messaging, it's like I invested in probably way too many coaches who weren't helping me to do that. They were trying to teach me a very, here's the way we do it, like 3D masculine structured, like you just follow this and be less that, right? Like I've actually had people tell me, like I used to have like blue in my hair, and they were like, maybe you want to go natural, maybe you want to like hide some of your tattoos. And I was like, wait, what? Like that didn't feel right for me, right? And so the more I tried to do things that way in my business, that was just a mirror for my life. The more that I tried to live in that box of like, this is what you're supposed to be, I was miserable and it didn't work. Like I wasn't making, like great sales. I wasn't doing successfully in my business. I wasn't happy in what I was doing. I actually didn't even want to be doing it anymore. I got to that place as well. And so as a result of really healing some of my own wounds and traumas that kept me in that fear, because I would love to say, oh yeah, I just said F the fear and then, owned that part of myself. But no, there was also this piece that was like healing. And that then allowed me to own that part of myself. And it was a direct result of doing that in my business, my message got clearer. I started getting the people coming to me who I just adore working with, right? Like they get me and I get them. And it's like the truest expression of me guiding them into their truest expression. So it doesn't even feel like work. Whereas before, when it was misaligned, I was attracting people who weren't that. And so it felt, I was like, oh God, what am I, a therapist? Like, no, you know what I mean? It wasn't like really fun and activating. And then of course, too, the other side of that is the money, the sales, like that all comes in with more ease. I've really come to understand that the more of me that I embrace and embody and express to the world, that's actually the thing that brings in more and more and more success and more and more and more sales and more opportunities, right? Because it's not even about the money, it's even just about the opportunities, the connections, the collaborations. Like it all comes as a result of that. And in my personal life as well, it's like my friendships, one of the things that I was kind of like really in the last 2 years was like, oh my God, like I really feel like I don't have good friends of people who get me. Like I had my husband and we get each other, but I wanted those close girlfriend connections too. And those are all growing now with, right, with the people who I feel truly get me and I get them. And it's just like this beautiful expression of authenticity and connection and understanding. And I mean, it's in my health because physically, you were talking about like the brain, right? And it's like I have found that the years that I struggled with chronic pain and dis-ease and anxiety, it's like all of those things were connected to me holding inside of me my truth and then trying to hide it. And so the more I just am who I am and I regulate my nervous system through healing, it allows me to hold more of who I am. And that then impacts my health too. It's like it's this crazy thing that sounds so simple, but then it truly expands every single area of life. Like at least it has for me. And I mean, I see the same thing in my clients too. So it's right, you know, it's a truth. It's like we seek outwardly for the and oh, let me go on the diet. Let me try to get a different job. Maybe I need a new partner. Maybe I just got to go buy some new outfits and then I'll feel good. And it's like no, right? All those things are great to have, but if we're not in that true, authentic alignment and expression from within, which for me definitely came as a result of owning that spiritual part of myself, then everything else started to really fall in line and in align, like in a truly authentic and aligned way.
Yeah, that's so true. And I guess like everyone in this field, they probably all think similar or the same. And even I loved you telling me and everyone who's listening about the part regarding the tattoos. Like people, oh, maybe you should get rid of them, and oh, maybe you should actually have your hair natural. And for me, it was very similar because I mean, I have natural curls. Sometimes they are more wavy. Sometimes they are more curly, and I used to straighten them like every single day. And at
Me
some
too.
point, yeah, and at some point, I didn't even question why I did that. I was like just on autopilot, like doing it like a robot. And when I had the moments of actually sitting alone or having a few minutes of relaxation, I always felt miserable, like you said. And of course, at that point, you don't know why. And then there are people telling you, oh, maybe you should actually wear more business clothes or high heels if you want to work with business people. And I'm like, no, why should I? And then it actually attracts those people who always look outside and not inside, and maybe are still like stressed or wondering why stuff doesn't work out. And yeah, it's so crazy. I always meet so many people who want to like fix stuff and like put a band-aid on it from the outside. And it's like, oh, I have this great plan, I have this strategy for you, you just do XYZ, and if you follow it, you are, I don't know, successful, or the money comes in or whatever. And if you don't do that, you will be like, it's your fault. It's like it's and I'm like, really, why, and it's like so much surface level, so you
Mm,
can't actually, if you don't go deep, you can't really have this feeling of ease and joy, I think. And what you mentioned regarding the relationships, and also regarding the money in business, it's so sad still that so many people actually think they can only achieve it with this outside work and hard work compared to actually looking within and taking some like pauses actually, and that can help so much. So do you actually have like something like a daily practice or like
Mm,
daily schedule? Like how do you actually balance like the work with clients and still like in, like Guru Singh would say, to help your cup overflow?
totally. Yeah, and that's such an important piece of it, right? Because that's like another. So yes, I totally have a practice, which I'll talk about in a second. And I just want to say like why I find it so important, because it is this other piece, right, of this like this grid or this matrix that we're living in, where it's like hard work, hustle, go, 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 and it's like that's all praised and everything, right? Like people love to push to the point of burnout, and those of us that are here kind of bringing in a new way, right? We're like embodying this new way where yes, of course we still work, but it's from this more easeful place of alignment, and there's still actions we have to take. But again, it's from that place where the cup is running over, right? It's like, so when we can act from that place, it's up to us. Like that's our biggest responsibility in the day is doing whatever we need to do to make sure that cup is running over. And that's where that daily practice can come in. And for me personally, I used to be all over the place with it. Like I loved meditation and I loved yoga, but I was not consistent. And I found, this is interesting, I found that I wasn't consistent because there was a really big part of me that doubted that it was even going to work for me. I didn't truly yet believe that, oh, I can have this daily practice and it's helping me, right? There was still that part of me that thought I had to go out there and find it and push it. So I was very inconsistent in my practice. And as a result of that, my cup was inconsistently full. And as a human design projector, right, that's not going to work for me. You too, right? Like I have to be taking care of myself and I have to have that energy to really be in my magic. So again, as a result of the deeper healing work I did, right? That looking deeper and really clearing that stuff out and shifting out of that self doubt into the trust, it's like I naturally started going into this daily disciplined practice. And it's not even, I don't even like to use the word disciplined because it kind of has like a negative connotation. Oh, I'm so disciplined, right? It's like I'm forcing myself to do that, but it's not that. It's like through the healing, we become so aligned that it just becomes then a natural action to take daily. And so my personal practice is in the morning and in the evenings, where I will mix up depending. Although right now I'm in the middle of like a 40-day kriya that I'm doing, so that's kind of one of them, with, and I'm doing it with some breath work. But the key parts of my practice are always breath work. I always do some kind of breathing to get my breath going, whether it's breath of fire or Wim Hof or something else. I love to incorporate Kundalini Kriyas because I just love the way they work on our field and our body. And then I also love spiritual mind treatment, which is also known as affirmative prayer, which is something that comes to us from New Thought, which is, it's not really that new, right? Like they've been studying it for like 100 years. It's just something that kind of gets swept under the rug, I think, because it's so powerful. But yeah, to me, through those things of some kind of meditation, some kind of breath work, kriyas, and then the affirmative prayer, those things work on me physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually to get those channels open and get everything flowing. And then of course I also include yoga if my body is asking for it, like the actual physical, yoga asanas. I will include some journaling if I feel like there's stuff that I need to process through. And then I also won't even hesitate if through the course of the day I notice my mind getting like, because it totally can, where I want to like start to control something, or I get frustrated, right? Or I think I have to work harder. I'm like, no, 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 no. And I will interrupt it and go and do some breathing or a kriya or, a mind treatment. And that's what works for me.
Yeah, I even love that you kind of said that you actually don't do stuff always. Like maybe if you feel you need some journaling, you will do the journaling
Mm-hmm.
compared to I have to journal every day. because there are so many teachers out there. You actually have to do your daily practice, and you always have to do your journaling, you have to do your vision board and all
Mhm.
this stuff. And I think it can also feel overwhelming for people, and also like it's forced, and because not everything fits to everyone. So I think it's amazing that you also like choose what you actually feel you need, but you still have this daily practice. So I think that's really really cool. So one last question before I ask you like three more, yeah, let's say easy questions. um, at the beginning, you mentioned the new Earth, and I guess there are so many people who are like, "What the heck? What is new Earth? And what is she talking about? Like
Mm.
3D? What is that? I mean, is it like something I watch in the cinema?"
Totally. I love this question and I love talking about this too. Because even me, when I first learned this stuff, I was like, wait, what? Okay. And I used to totally, I'll be totally honest. Like when I first heard people talking about like new Earth and 5D, I was like, oh God, here they go, right? All of these like ungrounded people, blah, 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 blah. And I was totally like, whatever with that, right? Like I couldn't see it at the time. And again, through my own journey and my own exploration into my consciousness, as I started to evolve and expand more and more, I started to really see it. And so basically, in a nutshell, when we talk about the 3D, it's essentially just it's the world we've been living in, this reality that is very driven by polarity and conflict, and the idea that there is like these polar opposites of like the extremes, right? There's like all the abundance, but there's also all the scarcity. And one of the kind of main pieces, if you will, of that 3D matrix is this idea that we are powerless, right? That we don't have active control over our lives, that we're living at the mercy, if you will, of like somebody else, whether it's another group's fault or it's the government's fault or it's that country's fault, right? And what we're seeing right now, there's like this big spotlight on all of the like division, right? All of the aggression, all of the injustice. It's all being brought out into the light, not because it hasn't been there, but because as we raise our consciousness on the planet, so the shift, if you will, 3D, 4D to 5D is really, it's not like we're not going anywhere, but our consciousness is changing. Our consciousness is expanding. And more of our consciousness, which is very high frequency, is being held in our physical vessels. So us as humans are becoming a different version of ourselves in that our bodies are changing, we're purging, we're clearing, we're releasing a lot of that density so that we can hold more of our higher consciousness. And that's what's then going to allow us to start creating that higher frequency 5D, if you will, new Earth, which is the idea of like, it's not like perfection and utopia where there's never like, we're not just gonna, oh poof, now we're in heaven, right? It's just, if you think about 3D being the most extreme polarity, where there's like these really big opposites of like, let's just use health and wellness or lack and abundance, right? We see extremes on this earth. People could be living in like extreme poverty, but then we also have like quadrillionaires, right? So it's like as consciousness expands and we become more embodied in that, that polarity gets to start coming closer and closer and closer, which means as we continue to create the world we're living in, we start creating one where it's not just, it's the expanded consciousness of, say, wealth isn't only for a few, right? Everybody accesses it more and more and more and more. And that's really like the ascension and the shift into that new earth, if you will. Yeah, I hope I kind of said that in a way that was
Yeah, I love how you framed it, because it's like very yeah, very, let's say, down to earth, so people
yeah.
can really grab it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's really practical. Because like what I learned like in my studies of Kundalini, it's even like the 3D, it's where you have the actual like dimension of time and place, so you actually
Yes.
have memory and all that stuff, and you actually know, okay, there's me and there's this other person. But in like 5D we have this higher consciousness, like you already said. So we have like not only the, okay, there's me and there's this other person, but there's an actual we, like connecting to the, like, let's say full
Mm,
universe and megaverse, and actually like seeing or knowing that there are other, like, let's say forces we can't actually see, and knowing that they are there. So yeah, I really like how you framed it with a more like practical part. So I know that you have a program, and would you actually like to tell people more about your work in the program and what they could expect from it?
so a lot of the work I do, my program is called The Portal because it really is about shifting through to that higher consciousness aspect of ourselves. Because all of my work is really about it's healing and it's clearing. And so what we were just talking about, that idea of like 3D being this polarity where there's all this division and separation, it's like that exists outside of us because it exists within us. So my work is truly taking the people that are ready and that want to take that journey into themselves so that they can clear that out from within their own consciousness, their own DNA, their own programs, so that they can truly start consciously creating the reality they're living in. Because by each of us doing that for ourselves, that's how we're going to change the world. So the work that I do is really, we work on a few different levels. There's embodiment, there's mindset stuff, we do subconscious reprogramming. I do a couple of different trauma healing methods, some quantum healing and energy work, because I found that it's like, it's not enough for us to just approach it from the mind, right? We've got to let it become embodied. And for us to embody it, we have to then clear out any wounds and traumas, and while also expanding our energy field. So I like to work with people on all four of those layers. That's what I get to do in my programs. And I work with people one-on-one, I work with people in groups. And hopefully next year I'm going to be able to launch a retreat where we could do it in person. So I'm excited about that too.
That sounds amazing. And I love that you said the part also about it's not only about the mental part, like only the mindset, but about embodying it. And also, it's so cool to hear you are planning a retreat. So, congrats to that. And yeah, so everyone who would like to connect more with you and join the program or follow you maybe on social media, where could they find you?
Yeah, totally. So mostly Facebook and Instagram are kind of my jam right now. I've really been enjoying Instagram, doing a lot of reels and stuff on there. So you can totally connect with me there at I am Lindsay Carricarte, and I'll send you all my links too. Check out any of my content. There's a link in my bio that has some great freebies and some different tools and resources people can start playing with, some free classes I did. That's all in there. You can send me a DM or just on Facebook. Yeah, as Lindsay Carricarte Jones on Facebook, my married name on there. But they're all me. So either one of those.
Yeah, it's funny how many names we might get right during life. So, is there anything else you would like to share with everyone listening or watching? For example, maybe like a biggest transformation you had, or a motto you are living by, or just anything else you would like to share?
Yeah, I would just love to remind every single one of you that is listening that you are all 100% badass creators of your reality. Every single one of you is just so freaking powerful. And if you're listening to this, right, it's for a reason. And so, whatever that feeling in your heart is of whatever it is that you want to create in the world, honor that, because that is that expression of your divinity. So, follow it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, it's so true. Just do whatever your heart tells you or your intuition tells you to do. And in that way, thank you so much, Lindsay, for your time for the interview. And I really, really loved connecting with you during the interview.
I know. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me. It's been such a joy chatting.